Spaces, the name, it comes from arcade that you can find in architecture, which means command and kind of organization, origins, and you have the M you can find in all mathematical, it's a mathematical symbol, and spaces. And what's important in spaces is the S. That means that we talk about spaces in plural. Because in the history of architecture, you talked a lot about space in singular. So plural is very important. So, okay. Oh. Sorry. So, if you go a quick see in architecture history, first you have the two-dimensional, which is the decor, the frontage. You can see in old temple, also at the La Renaissance, and then you go to three dimension, for example, with the Villa Savoie from Le Corbusier, but it came earlier, and then you go to four dimensions, maybe with one of the first kind of deconstructivist project, which is the Chapelle de Ronchamp. The four dimension means that you deal with the time, with the notion of promenade in architecture, inside the project and around. And then you have another project from Copy Blue that just being finished in Korea. And right now we should go to n-dimensional. What's n-dimensional? N-dimensional, it's new dimension created thanks to new technologies. That means with the phone, the internet, all that screen, we can create new kind of connection between the spaces. So the ancient architecture was a decor. Right now it should be an experience including every senses, that's mean emotional, and it was an object. Right now it should be made of many environments with an S, and it was a space, and it's made of interconnected spaces. What I will present you today is a theory that I developed for maybe 8 years, and I just finished it. It's brand new. I named it subtle architecture with a T because of the artistic content. So the subtle architecture, first in architecture you have to deal at human scale because a building needs to be adapted to human life. What I want to say is that, for example, if you take some designers that do architecture, usually they can make model or thing and think like in a real model, like an object. But it's not interesting. What's interesting is seeing the object from this point, which means the human point of view. Experimentation deals that the space needs to give you feeling, to give you sensation, to bring you emotion. Of course, when I say that, don't forget the name, it's subtle, so it needs to be subtle. And of course, dealing with those experimentation, you also need to deal with the then part, which is the opposite, when the architecture needs to disappear for people life to do something else. In the same way, you need to connect spaces and to connect them thanks to new technology, to also connect people with spaces, but as the same way, we need disconnection. Sometimes we do need to be disconnected to have to be really in the present. So you have to deal with those opposite way. And at the end, that's very important. A building is finished only when it's inhabited, when there's people inside it. That's why it's a daily opera in which the user is playing a part. A building with nothing inside just does not exist. So the end of the piece of work is when the people are inside. So I will present it to you, the subtle architecture, in 10 points. First point is dealing with context. Context, you have the spot, which is the building relationship with the earth, but also with the sky. You have the history, which deals it deals with the place you are going to build or to create a project, of its memory, what was before, the local materials. Of course, it's talking about sustainable development. There's no slide on sustainable development because any good architecture deals with sustainable development. I mean, you take a Frank Lloyd Wright building, it already deals with that. The geography, depending if you're near the sea, in the mountains, the climate, talking with the wind, the temperatures, the humidity, the view, the economy, the social issues inside the building and for your building, but also for the area around. That's very important. When you create a building, maybe you can create a place where people from around can meet. The local know-how, dealing with the local technology, and it's also sustainable development. The culture, it's different creating a building in Asia, in Europe, even in Asia. There's a lot of differences. And the program. And all those elements, all those constraints are the first part of giving you the inspiration for creating the project. Then you have the build basics. According to Vitruve, you have an architecture combines utilitas, fermitas, and venustas. So the basic first, it's of course the function, the program, the flow, how you go inside the building, the convenience and the maintenance. I like the idea that the building is not finished when you deliver it, but nature around has to make it in the place, and in the same way maintenance is a really important question. Then you have the construction and sustainability. Of course, we need to construct well. And then you have the core, what I call the core, which is kind of building brain. It's dealing with intelligent building. So of course you have the intelligent green buildings. That's mean there's a computer which is kind of the brain of the building, and it will adapt the atmosphere to how many people are there, to temperature, to humidity. That's dealing with the intelligent green building. But the important part is also to use this tool in order to create poetry, to create different kind of environment. It's also deal with when Rem Koolhaas talks about in junk space about the air conditioning everywhere the same. So we have to create different kind of environment. The third point is movement. So you have two kind of movements: the human movement. If you just have a square building, when you go around it with your mind, you can figure out what you are going to see. And so what should be done, and it has been done, for example, with this constructivist architecture, is that when you go around, you have some surprise. You don't know what you're going to see. The other point is the inner movement, with the example in nature with the tree, with or without leaves, with some bridge that can move. You can also think of all the shading systems in building and other stuff. The fourth point, and maybe the main point, is about creating environments. So to create architecture, it's not only material, it's sensorial, emotional, and so you deal with the ASAR, the hearing, for example. A lot of school that has been done don't really deal with how the sound propagates, and it's very important for the student to follow the course. It deals with the materiality of the floor, of the wall, the taste, the smell, everything dealing with the senses. Of course, with subtlety. And you also have some environments that are natural environment, because sometimes architecture just need to disappear. So that's a multisensorial atmosphere. And when you have creating those environments, the next point is to create the relation the connection between those environments. It's like in nature you have matter and you have energy. So here you have the environment, you need to create the connection. The connections, there's two kinds of connections. There's some physical connection and some immaterial connection. Physical link, immaterial link. In old architecture and in a lot of architecture, you have the wall, so first piece of architecture, the wall with, on one side you have the inside and on the other side you have the outside. So the question is how this space can move and can be wider and what can happen in this space. And that's what I call the gradient. It's between, you can have a high gradient like that, but you can also maybe have some kind of variation. That deals with the physical link, but you also have the immaterial link, which are created thanks to the core, which is the computer, and it will create interaction thanks to video, thanks to sound. When I say connection, it's connection environment with environment, but also environment with human. Because if there's 100 people in a room, it's not the same that if there is only 2, for example. And all that is dealing with the outside environment that could bring you some inputs into the program. The sixth point is modifying the pre-existing environment. We've done this project near Paris, and if you look at this picture, okay, we just do this part, you see this volume there, which is with stainless steel. You can think, okay, the architecture is here, but the architecture is not only here, because here we are on a north facade, and on sunset, light comes on that volume, and go back, and it comes there. So the architecture is here, even if there's no building on this image. This comes from the idea of a French poet, which say kind of to paint not only the thing, but also its effect. So we really have to think about the building effect on the city. The seventh point is the beauty. We've got a lot of examples in artistic content before, and that's why you have the beauty. Beauty is a really complex problem. You have beauty in nature. Some animals, some plants are just beautiful for everyone, and some others are not. And I think it's the same with art, because right now in art, not in architecture, but in art, if you talk about postmodernism, you have all those different kind of artists with no lines. So I think each one has to think about art history and how you go from one point to the other, and then you will find that some artists are just, for example, Jeff Koons. It's to my point of view, it was nothing. But if you take a build you have, and then you have all this thinking and creating the architecture. Right now, there's a lot of kind of fashion in architecture, which is biomorphic architecture, it's just copying nature. I don't think copying nature is a good point. We should get inspired by nature, but split on it. And so my project deals with both organic and geometric. And also, if you take all this school of the parametric design, I think parametric design is very interesting, but if you just take piece of it. If it's the whole, then the parametric design, it's a program. You just create a program, and the program creates the architecture. And this would create uniform architecture. If we really want the diversity and the identity in architecture, each one of us, each architect has to put his touch, has to do it. That's why it's need to start with human, both for the material architecture and for the immaterial architecture, which is the design of the core. 8th point is dealing with novelty, with the example of Vincent van Gogh. It's maybe from here than after that Jackson Pollock came, because you have the same kind of of matter on the painting. And when he did those paintings, they just were nothing. People just do not understand anything about it. And then it becomes universal beauty. Another French poet called Baudelaire say, beauty is first bizarre. I would say novelty in beauty is first bizarre. That's the point. It brings you out of your comfort zone. It's bizarre, it's strange, so you don't really know it. But we must create novelty. Today, even in the same condition, if I did a building as beautiful as the same as Louis Kahn, it's great, but he's done it 1 century before me. So we need to deal with this notion of novelty, and also in architecture you think a project and maybe there's 5 or 10 years before it's being built, so we need to be in advance. The 9th point is concept and signification. The architectural project also has to deal with this notion of concept, that's of idea, of word. Depending on each architect, it's sometimes it's more than other. But this notion of word and meaning will give you the sense through the materiality and sense of immateriality. And the 10th and last point, it's complexity, simplicity. We've seen that creating architecture is really, really, really complex. It deals with a lot of problems, a lot of fields, and after that, when you have studied, you have apprehend, you have created this complexity, it should be summed up. It should be summed up through simplicity in order to become an icon or a symbol. And for example, if you take the quote of Leonardo da Vinci, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. In the simplicity word, first, before creating this simplicity, you have to deal with the complexity. So the purpose of subtle architecture is first the identity and the diversity at urban scale. The valuation, urban value, when you create the building, it creates value around it, relative value and absolute value, which deal with the notion of beauty, and then it becomes an historic opportunity when the present meets the eternity.